you could say that the soul senses are then, if you think about it from a long-term perspective, the soul senses are the most important senses that you could ever develop. Can you see that? Right? The senses of the physical body, like playing tennis, the sense of the physical body. Not very important to develop in the long run. Right? But it can be fun and you can enjoy it in the short term perhaps. But in the long run, it's not going to be something that is going to be something that gives you huge amounts of satisfaction, particularly when you can teleport and do a heap of other things and manufacture whole games that we know nothing about here on Earth. You're not going to feel much like tennis. Tennis is going to be like babyland, right, in terms of what I could do in that condition. In the soul condition, those kind of things become so unimportant. So can you see how, as I go through and I start growing in different areas of my self-awareness, I first start developing generally, and this is the unfortunate truth about our Earth existence, we first generally start experiencing our physical body senses. And unfortunately for the majority of the planet, we only ever develop them. Right? Now, we sometimes get into the spirit body senses. For example, our intellect is often starting to be developed, and our intellect comes from our spirit body's brain. Right? The spirit body has a mind, and that's what is part of our intelligence. So we start developing that. Unfortunately, we're often brain dominant in that process, right? But we develop that part of ourselves. But we neglect huge amounts of our spirit body senses even in our own development here on Earth. But then we get onto the New Age path and we start realising there's this thing called mediumship and there's healing and there's all these other things, right? And so we start to experiment with these metaphysical, what I'd call the metaphysical truths, which are all surrounding the spirit form. But for the majority of the planet, the soul development is totally neglected, isn't it? Right? Now, because this is a soul-to-soul union that we're encouraging with our soulmate, can you see it's going to confront a lot of the belief systems that we have about the development of the other forms. So, for example, I'm standing here in a physical form, Mary's in a physical form. I'm going to come along into this relationship, if this is a soulmate relationship, I come along into this relationship with a lot of preconceived intellectual ideas of what is my ideal. They're based on emotional connections that I have to my parents and what I've perceived from them to be the ideal. So if my mother is 5'3", she's quite slim, she's, I suppose you'd classify her as brunette, and that's my mother, then that becomes part of my physical ideal for my soulmate. Does that make sense? And unless I'm willing to challenge that ideal, I'll probably look around and anyone taller than 5'3" gets neglected in terms of my attractions because of this emotional connection to the parent. Does that make sense? And so what's happening is I am judging everything through the development of these two parts of my form and the errors that have entered my soul as a subsequent result of that. And I'm judging my entire surroundings, including what my soulmate should be, through that. And so what do? I walk along the street, my soulmate walks past and I don't even notice her. And the reason why I don't even notice her is because the soul part of myself is undeveloped. Now, once I develop the soul part of myself and I start opening up towards the other half of myself, what is starts to happen is that I'm no longer focused on these bodies so much anymore. Right? Right? So I now start perceiving myself as a soul with these appendages, which we will call bodies. But I don't see the bodies as me. I see the soul, my real me, I can feel inside of myself, my personality, my attributes, my characteristics, my desires, my longings, my passions, my intentions that all form my soul. And I'm really starting to really focus on that. And And ironically, in that place, at the same time, I'm starting to see everyone else around me in the same manner. So I'm not really seeing their face. And I'm not really seeing what they wear anymore so much. Can you see that? It has to sort of be outstanding and really strike you before you notice those things, because what you're really starting to notice is the soul. The thing that's really the real person. You're starting to notice that. So you're starting to open up this soul part of yourself. And as a part of that process, the soulmate part of yourself starts getting opened up, because you start becoming sensitive to the flows of feelings going on between yourself and any other person who comes into your field of view at the soul level. Right? In other words, any other person that comes into your soul awareness, which doesn't necessarily mean that you see them. It can actually mean that you can feel them. So you'll be able to start feeling every single person around the planet, pretty much. As soon as you're aware of them as an entity, you can now start to feel them and what emotions they have and what feelings they have, what desires and passions they have and what belief systems they have that are all a part of the soul. And you can do the same with your soulmate. Now, what happens electrically, if you like, from an energetic perspective, is your soul is now not fully just connected to your bodies anymore, but your soul is capable of bypassing your bodies for its experience. Do you follow me? Right? Because you're developing the soul's capabilities, you're now capable of not just experiencing the soul through the bodies, through the connection of the cords that are connecting the body to the soul, but you're actually now capable of experiencing things at the soul level without the bodies being involved. And this is what your emotions are all about. When you feel an emotion, most of the time you don't need your bodies to experience these emotions. And it's the emotions that actually are the most powerful part of you, if you think about it. Right? Many of you who have started connecting to your emotions start to understand this in a more full manner. What you start feeling and experiencing inside of yourself is this deep feelings that when you're emotional, it doesn't really matter what the emotion is, when you're emotional, that's the real you. And you can start really feeling that that's the real you. And every interaction comes from that place inside of you, the feeling place inside of you. And what happens to your body, and you might be throwing your arms around and throwing your legs around like, sometimes I do or whatever, that's just an expression of your soul's emotion. The body is just now the tool by which your soul is expressing itself. And you don't need that tool for the soul to express itself, actually. Right? Now, once you start doing that, you start opening up to experiences, and it's these emotions that are related to the male and the female that you start experiencing that are what I would term the soulmate part of yourself. The soulmate part of yourself is capable of being developed without your bodies being involved, without your spirit body or your material body being involved. And the beauty of that is your soul starts feeling other souls at that level. So you're not judging things now through what you see, you're judging things now through everything that you feel. Everything you feel is now the important thing. Now, that being said, your soulmate, now let's say you're walking along the road like this, right? And you've got not only these bodies that you're expressing yourself, but now you're very, very aware at the soul level of all this stuff that's out there from your soul that bypasses the bodies. In other words, the body isn't interested, you're not really interested in other people's bodies anymore. You're now interested just in their soul, right? And as that comes out of you, and you walk past your soulmate, what do you think you're going to start experiencing? You'll be going, whoa, something's going on here, right? So it's a bit like, how when you get magnets when you pass them by each other and they're attracted, it's like, whoa, like, it's pretty hard to keep them apart. And that's what you start experiencing. You go, whoa, wow, this is really different. This is different than every other person I've met. Every other single person you've met is going to be different experience than your soulmate experience when you're open at this level. Does that make sense? And so you walk past and you go, no, this is very different. Something's really up here, right? So when I met Mary, and all that happened was she came and sat down in front of me, and I was talking to her brother, and she came down and sat down in front of me. And I didn't know what to do, because it was just like this feeling that I could feel was a totally different feeling than I could ever remember in my entire life ever having. And she just sat there, and she looked at me like I was some pretty dumb person, really. Well, I was a little bit, wasn't I, really? Like, I didn't really know what to say. And no, Mary didn't judge me like that. I'm just saying that's how it felt. But I was just like tongue-tied because I was just feeling these feelings, and I didn't know how to express them, and certainly I couldn't express them to Mary in the situation we were in, and I didn't feel I could. And so, it just was overwhelming. Now, when I met her in the first century, it was a very, very similar experience for me. Exactly the same kind of experience. It was like walking past the building and going, whoa, what's going on here? Like, there's something going on here between my soul and this person. Right, what's happening here? And the beauty of healing the male-female part of your soul, the soulmate part of your soul, if you like, healing all of that, and allowing yourself to feel the passion and desire of that grow, is that your soul bypasses the bodies in its awareness, and now you feel the other person without, it's like their body isn't there, almost, right? And all of a sudden, feelings rise in you that are the result of this soul-based interaction. Right? Now, once that happens, you then come to the first time to realise in your life, not at an intellectual level, but at an emotional level, that there is such a thing as a soulmate connection. And you also start to realise how special it is and unique it is. It is the most unique connection and also everlasting connection that you will ever have. So many of you are very connected with your families. But to be frank with you, by the time you reach the third, fourth or fifth spheres of the spirit world, you're not going to be very connected to your family compared with your connection to your soulmate. Right? And by the time you reach the celestial heavens, the only times that you'll be connected with your family is if they've reached them with you. Right? Because aside from your soulmate connection, you will feel very strongly that you do not need or desire or want any other connection other than this one. This one is like the essential connection that's there for the rest of your lifetime. And God created it that way because in regard to somebody else is going to be able to completely understand you, not for any other reason that they are you. Right? And you think about a lot of times what happens in a relationship is we're looking for someone who understands us, right? Well, once the soulmate relationship is perfected, the soulmate is you. So of course they're going to understand you. Does that make sense? They're going to have very, very similar feelings to what you have about all sorts of matters and issues. A lot of people then go down and say, oh, you're just in love with yourself then. Which of course you are. That is what soulmate love is. Soulmate love is a perfect love of yourself. Not in the sense that, like, when I love Mary perfectly, I will also love myself, because myself is the sum total of the two of us together. Is that not true? The way I'm describing it. And so the soulmate, the soul part of the whole complete soul is really loving itself completely once the two halves completely connect with each other. That's what we're really doing. We're actually allowing the two halves to connect completely. And it's that part of your soul that needs to be open. That's the soulmate part of your soul. And that's the very unique thing that can only occur with your soulmate. No other person on this universe can connect with you in the same manner. Does that make sense?